Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. I wanted to talk about one of the issues that's kind of become very apparent to me with the kind of new system of tracking metastats for decks in Legends of Runeterra, and that's the low sample size issue. So currently, there are a massive number of decks that you can't find valid statistics for. It's just not possible. And the first kind of domino falling was that, Mobalytics got rid of its statistics tracking. It just stopped trying. The next kind of step, the next domino that fell is that Eternal became kind of the redheaded stepchild format. So then all the legacy decks that were in the game, all of that cumulative knowledge, all of that stuff has kind of been lost over time. And so we've come to a state right now where there is a very limited number of decks that we have valid statistics on, and a huge number of decks we have no statistics on whatsoever. So I'll give you an example. If I wanted to look up right now what the best traps deck is in Eternal, I would have no idea. I'd basically just have to build it out myself, something like this, and just give it a spin and see how it does. But if I wanted to find the best traps deck, or not to copy it, but at least just to get some insights on the statistics and the matchups and things like that, or to get some deck building ideas, it would be impossible for me to do so. Another great example is like if I wanted to know how is Pirate Aggro doing right now in Eternal, that would be another case of those statistics simply do not exist. I do not know how Pirate Aggro is doing in Eternal right now. I know how Annie Jin is doing, because that deck gets played more often, but I have no valid statistics for Pirate Aggro right now in Eternal. And I can kind of go on and on. There are a lot of interesting legacy decks that, I can no longer get valid statistics on. Like, say I want to play, like, Karma Ezreal. And, I saw someone trying to bring that deck back where they were playing Karma and then they were playing Cat, right? So they're basically doing the crystal duplication thing where you get the, board-wide Mystic Shot in P&Z. And they were trying to bring that deck back, which I believe originally was like a Bruised by God concept. He's no longer playing the game. So it was the Fallen Feline deck, right? And like they were trying to bring this back. And, and again, they lost that game, but I was just kind of interested to know, like, is this still viable in Eternal? Can you still build a deck that does okay with Hexite Crystal? Because this is a really cool card. Can you make that work? Well, I don't know. You can't find lists, you can't find stats, you can't find someone building brews that people actually want to play. Like, those numbers are just gone. What you're left with is a standard format that is very well known. Every single variable is accounted for, and every single deck has been built and thought of, and every single brew has been made. But then you have the Eternal format, and there's just no valid statistics for like 50% of the card pool. You just have no idea, and like 50% of the decks, you just have no idea if they're still viable or not. That's a real shame, because again, that's the legacy of this game that is essentially being lost and not cataloged. And so a lot of that kind of happened when there was the transition from Swim to Majin Bay, and there was like a loss of records between those two legacies there. And then there was the loss of statistics through Mobalytics, and then all those numbers got thrown out. And then there was also, again, the format change from Standard to Eternal, and then all of that got lost. And then also to another point as well, which was brought up, is that Reddit is no longer kind of a good place either for discussing deck builds or strategies, or basically it's just the same thing you find on Mastering Runeterra respat out onto Reddit. But there's very little independent thought or independent brews being presented, or complex discussions being presented on Reddit, because again, most of the people that had opinions about this game have been kicked off of Reddit, which is a shame. And again, a lot of that was the transition from Standard to Eternal once again, because a lot of people got mad at that, and they were frustrated at that because they wanted to play their cards that they wanted in their decks on ladder year round. And even now, it's still like you got to wait 2 months to play Eternal ladder, and then it's only up for like a month, and then it's gone again, and like that's very frustrating. Yeah, again, I would like to see some efforts being made to revitalize some of these older archetypes, to get valid statistics on some of these older archetypes. I know that Poppy Tarek is still a valid deck. That's an older deck that's been around a long time, and I know that this is still valid, but I don't know how Traps is doing. You know, again, I don't know how Karma combo decks are doing in Eternal. Um, I don't know how Gwen is doing in Eternal. I don't know how Scouts is doing in Eternal. I don't know how Pirate Aggro is doing in Eternal. There's just so many decks. I don't know how, this stuff is doing, which is formidable. So, like, I don't know how formidable decks do in Eternal. Like, I just don't have valid statistics or valid deck builds for, like, 99% of what you can play in Eternal. Poro King, any of this stuff. So again, I don't think it's laziness. I just don't, it's just impossible for Majin and Allan to just cover the breadth of decks that are available in this game by themselves. They just can't do it. There's just too much ground to cover. And not to mention that their focus is always going to be on standard, and it's always going to be on winning in a tournament setting. It's not their job to catalog all of the decks in LOR and see how competitive they are for the people who might care. But yeah, there's definitely ground being lost there. I don't know how Leona is doing. How are Daybreak decks doing in Eternal right now? Like, I have no concept of how these decks get built, how they play. How is Ahiri doing? How is Diana doing? How is Kenna doing? Like, I can just look at all these champs. How's Master Yi doing? Right? How's Soraka doing? Like, I can look at 99. How's Pantheon doing? Like, I can look at 99% of the champions in this game and just be like, I don't have numbers and I don't have deck lists for any of this stuff, because no one's trying, or no one cares to try. How's Malphite doing, right? And that's a shame, because there's a massive card pool. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's a lot of champions in LOR. This game's been around for many years now. How's Lucian doing, right? This game's been around for many, many years now. There just aren't valid statistics for most of it. So that's why when, I can say that, like, okay, I'm playing, Elusive Spam, and I can say that Elusive Spam is a very good deck, but you won't find this list, anywhere online. It's very unlikely. You would have to kind of dig for it, and again, my list is a little different. You won't find this anywhere, but I can tell you that this is one of the better decks in the format. You could probably win about 56% of games off of this. So, like, if I play 10 games in Eternal, there's a very good chance that I will win 8 of them, 7 of them out of 10. So, like, that's very good from a percentage standpoint. And it would be good enough that it could be cataloged along with the other decks in Eternal. But it's just not, right? And again, it's just too much ground to cover. It's just Majin and Allan just can't cover all of these off-meta brews, and they can't know how they're performing because they just don't play them, and they don't know, and they don't care to know. So again, it's kind of unfortunate, but keep in mind that there are so many decks. Like, is there a competitive Thralls deck out there with Lysandra? Like, I really want to know, does that deck exist? Is there a Boadir Thralls deck, that is competitive with Lysandra? I don't know, right? And what is competitive? Well, all it has to do is win 50% of games, and that's good enough. If you can create a Lysandra deck that wins 50% of games, it is good enough to appear in the meta statistics for Eternal as a format. But right now, I just don't know. So that's Eternal King signing out. Just a little food for thought that a lot of, interesting people and a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of deck brews have been lost in the sea of time for this game. And I think I've done a pretty good job of listing all the factors that help contribute to that. If you have any interest in continuing to catalog the effectiveness of these old decks and these old champions and these ideas, give me a shout out in the comments. All right, this is Eternal King signing out.